Hey there, everyone. I'm Raymond Lee, the host of Clocking Out. This podcast, it was born from a deeply personal place. Like many of you listening, I've experienced those moments where you look at your career and you think to yourself, there has to be more than this. Those crossroads we all experience, they're hard. We tend to stay safe, feeling stuck, then taking that leap of faith. Clocking Out is dedicated to my mom, who showed me what courage really looks like when she took her own leap of faith to pursue career fulfillment. Her journey inspired me to find my own career path and now to create this space where we can explore other people's stories together. My hope here is that our guests might illuminate something in your own path, whether you're contemplating a major change or you're just simply looking for more meaning in your work. Either way, thank you so much for joining me on this journey.
This week, I am delighted to welcome Carla Stickler to our Clocking Out community. Carla is a Broadway star turned web engineer, and after a decade performing in Wicked, Mamma Mia, and The Sound of Music, Carla made headlines returning to Broadway as Elphaba during the COVID surge. Her Clocking Out story, it is pretty remarkable as she left the stage to pursue a career as a web engineer, and she's currently working at Spotify. Carla is also a champion for artists looking to make a career change into tech, and she's a member of Artists Who Code. She loves chatting with folks interested in shifting gears from the arts to programming, and she especially hopes to get more women and artists into the field. I just love this conversation with Carla, and I believe you're going to love her as well. So without further ado, please enjoy Carla Stickler and her Clocking Out story.
Carla, welcome to the podcast. It's nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So first of all, I have to say, the one thing that I absolutely love about this podcast is every guest that I have on, I learn something new. And the thing I learned about when I was reviewing your profile and sort of looking at your background, the one thing that I learned is you describe yourself as a professional multi-hyphenate. And I had no idea what that was before this call here today. And this is someone who has multiple professions or skills. I think that's really interesting that you describe yourself this way. And I'm really excited to share with folks here today about how hyphenate sort of evolves to become a multi-hyphenate. And I just think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that term because I think the nice thing about it is it's like fully encompasses all the things that you are and have all the skills you have developed over the course of your life and career, as opposed to saying, I am this one thing now, and now I am this other thing, and now I am this other thing. Whereas just because I am not currently doing one of the things that I know how to do at this moment does not mean that that is not still a part of who I am and what I do. And so I like that it kind of brings all of those parts together, and it allows my self-definition, my identity, my professional, I guess, quote unquote, identity to be more than just like the current thing that I do.
Yeah, that's so true. And as you were describing that, I just think of all the people who I've spoken to who have this linear career where they're one thing and they feel like they have to clock out of that one thing to become another thing. And really that identity evolves and it sort of makes you the person that you are. And I just think it's so fascinating and I can't wait to dig in.
Awesome.
So Carla, what I love to do is start with a little bit of the origin story here. Would love for you to share with our listeners. Tell us where you're from and what your parents do for a living.
Well, I grew up outside of Chicago in a town called Oak Park, Illinois. I border Chicago, so I was just saying I'm from Chicago. I grew up going downtown. My grandma was an opera singer, so I grew up going down to her voice studio. My mom was in the arts. She's a pianist. My dad is a tech guy. I don't know if I could actually tell you what he does. My whole life, I'm like, oh, he's a consultant. But he worked in tech. He worked with early computers and he did a lot of tech consulting. But my whole family was very much in the arts. So my whole childhood, my whole upbringing really was full of music and art. And like my mom's father was a violinist, and he was a illustrator for a magazine called Amazing Stories back in like the 40s, 50s. And he did all of the cover artwork. So we have a lot of very cool artwork of his. And so I grew up with him teaching me how to draw, and my mom teaching me piano, and my grandma teaching me how to sing, and my dad desperately trying to get me into computers. A lot of, just surrounded by a lot of different things.
Wow. That's so cool. It's so fortuitous because of, knowing where you are and the journey that you've been through in terms of your career. It's interesting to hear how your dad was a tech guy and your mom was an artist, a performer, a musician. So what was your most memorable moment growing up in Illinois?
Honestly, this is going to sound awful. One of my most memorable moments that always comes to mind when I think about like, in terms of like where I ended up, is when I didn't get cast in one of the musicals. And I didn't know what to do with myself. I had been performing every summer, and like I had been doing choir, and then I was in junior high, and my mom was actually the music director of our junior high musical theater program. And because she was the musical director, they didn't want to play favorites, so I wasn't allowed to be in all 3 of the productions in 8th grade. And so I only got to be in 2 of them. So there was like one window of like after school time where I had nothing to do. And it was like really, it was like one of those times where I think a lot about like, that was really hard. Like all I wanted to do was perform, and I wasn't allowed to. And I would go home and I would bake cakes. I would just like go home and like not do homework and just like bake all day because I didn't know what to do with myself, because all I wanted to do was perform, and they wouldn't let me be in all 3 of the shows. And that was weird. That was like the first time where I like wasn't getting something that I wanted. And I had to kind of experience that, like, what do I do with myself when things don't go the way that I want them to go?
Right. That's so interesting, Carla, because as you were describing that, the first thing that came to mind was being an understudy in Wicked, and in sort of having that feeling of waiting. Were you always drawn to the arts and performance? Is that what you dreamt about when you were a young girl?
Yeah, I think I was really influenced by my grandma and my mom. My mom, I wouldn't say this is like a bad thing, but she really pushed me into the arts. I was one of those kids where I was told a lot that I had a lot of talent, which, something I worked through therapy a lot on, like, is that necessarily a good thing to tell kids that they're really talented? Because I do think it puts a lot of pressure on kids, especially me. Like, I really thought that's what I had to do. And so in times when I wouldn't get the thing that I wanted, it was really hard. And it took, like, I had to really kind of like develop this like grit of like, well, I didn't get what I want. Why? What am I going to do better next time? Like, is it a reflection of who I am? And maybe I'm just not good. And I had always seen myself going in that path. And I always kind of knew that it was a direction I could go if I applied myself. Like, that was kind of the thing that was always instilled in me. So like, yes, it was a dream, but it was a dream because it was like kind of put on me as like something I could do and I should do because I have this thing that I can do very well, and so I should be doing it. I'm not 100% sure, even today, I'm going to be 42 on Friday. Even at 42, if it was my dream or not, I go back and forth on that because I wanted it because I was told that I should want it. And it's something I have battled with my whole career of, is this my dream? Is this my mom's dream? Whose dream is this? Wow. And it's been a really big part of like my up and down and reasons for when I've left the business, gotten back into the business, like reflecting on who am I doing this for? Whose dream is this? Is this mine? Do I want this? Would I rather just be a normal person who doesn't have all the pressure of this really heavy dream?
Wow. That is so interesting. I could feel that pressure that you were feeling at the time from your mom. And there's a couple of things you said there that just in reflecting back, you had this dream. And I believe a lot of people who want to be in the arts at a young age, whether they want to be a singer, a songwriter, a musician, an artist. They like to write. I hear so many times people, it's such a hard career to break into. And you had two sort of forces. You had a mom who was saying how great you were and how talented you are. And you sort of had to separate that from yourself and start to really lean into your identity and decide whether or not this is going to be a career that you pursue. And it's interesting, once you got past that, and then you sort of really said to yourself, yes, this is what I'm going to do, you persevered forward and you didn't let anything get in your way. And I have to tell you, so many people that I have spoken to who have that dream to do something that's more in the arts, they end up, I hear this often, they end up not pursuing it because they feel like they can't make a career out of it. Only 1 in a million actually make it. And so impressive that you had that level of determination and you were not going to let anything, stand in your way. And I just love that at such a young age, you really had a goal and you achieved it.
Yeah. Hearing it like said back like that is really interesting because it feels really naive a little bit, right? Like to say, oh, I want this thing. I know I'm going to get it. I'm going to work really hard to get it. Because like that is not everybody's story, right? Not everybody works really hard and then gets the thing that they want. But because I was able to kind of go through that and like work hard and get the thing that I wanted, it's made me look at everything in my life like that, where I'm like, oh, well, I know that I can do that. Like I look at, and like literally I am a crazy, and maybe it's my ADHD, but I am that crazy person that looks at anything and is like, oh, well, I could figure out how that works. I could do that. Like I know it's going to be hard, but I'm sure I could figure that out. Like, and it has that feeling, right? Like not everybody is able to do that. Not everybody is able to look at something and say, oh, I could probably do that, right? Like I looked at software engineering and I was like, I can figure that out. No reason that I should have been able to feel that way about it. Like I had never worked with computers. Like I just am the person through that early experience of like, being like, oh, well, I figured that out and that was hard. So I could probably figure that out, right? I'm not an idiot. I'm smart. I'm educated. I could probably figure that out.
Yeah. Well, you were talented. Like you had skills. It wasn't like you couldn't sing, you couldn't perform. Your mom recognized that you had skills, but you had to figure it out for yourself and you had to apply yourself and sort of, kind of identify with what is it that I am actually going to pursue. And I think that you getting clarity on that, I feel like allowed you to have that sort of confidence and belief in yourself. And this probably was reassuring that your mom said that you were good at it, because I think oftentimes people hear from their parents, like, you won't make a career of that. Mm-hmm. 1 in a million actually become an actor or make it to Broadway or become a recognized artist. The chances of you making a career and making money out of that is very slim. And ultimately it leads them into a career choice that is something that they don't like. And then you hear 20, 30 years later, they end up leaving that and going back to what it was that they dreamt of doing when they were younger. And so I think the combination of you getting the support, but then also recognizing that you had to break away and sort of kind of create your own identity, allowed you to focus in on really what you felt like you were called to do. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, where did it take you in terms of, you got your degree? What was your first big break?
So right out of college, I booked the Sound of Music Asia tour. And I was Liesel, the eldest 16 going on 17 daughter. And it was great. It was super fun. I was kind of just kind of thinking about what you just said about like this idea of like 1 in a million make it. And I felt like I had made it. I was like starring in a show in China, and like we were in China and like we were in Hong Kong, and it was really cool. And I felt like such a star. And I did that for like 4 or 5 months and came back, and I didn't work for a year. And I was having trouble getting auditions, and I was like, I had this really inflated ego because all the hard work that I had done really paid off when I got this show and I got this agent. But I came back to New York and nobody knew who I was because I had gone right after college. I had left, and I had to like rebuild. I had to reintroduce who I was. I had to audition. I had to meet casting directors. I had to like get my feet wet in the New York scene. And I didn't know how to do that. My agent, not the most helpful. He was like, well, you're not union, because it was a non-union job because it was overseas. Like, I can't really, he's like, I can submit you for some stuff, but like, you really should be going to open calls. You just need to be seen. You need to get your audition feet wet. You just need to like build that audition muscle. And I was so offended. Right? I was like 19 and I was like, but I'm going to be a star. Everybody should know about me. You should be able to get me into every room and I'm going to make it and I'm going to be famous. And I really had to like redefine again what it meant to be an actor and what it meant to work, what it meant to be successful as an actor. And so I started taking classes and I started going to every single open call that I could. And I started keeping a journal and I started writing down like, what was I wearing? What worked? What did I sing? Why did I get called back for this one? And I had to like start kind of analyzing the process in a way that I hadn't really done before. I was like, okay, well, how am I going to be good? If I'm going to be good at this, I've got to figure out what's going wrong, what's not working. And after a year, I booked Mamma Mia and I went out on tour for almost 2 years with that show. And I was my first time understudying. And that was another blow of like, I'm not the star of the show. Why am I not a star? I thought I was going to be a star, right? Like I thought like I put all this hard work in and I'm going to be a star, but I'm the understudy. And like every time I would go on, I would get great feedback. And then I got passed over when they replaced the role that I was understudying. And I was like, well, why did I get passed over? And my ego was hit so hard by that. And I left the show and I was just so upset. And I was like, what did I do wrong? Like they told me I wasn't what they were like, they wanted to go in a different direction. They brought in a girl who looked exactly like me. Like literally we were like the same height, same size, same hair colors. Like she and I would have been up against for every role at the same time, right? Like we looked identical. And I was like, well, clearly there's something else. What did I do? Right? Like it's not that they're going in a different direction because we are the same. So I couldn't figure it out and I left the show and my ego was really bruised and I was like really upset. And because again, like I had this idea that to be successful meant that I had to be famous, that I had to be starring in something, that I had to be this incredible, I had this incredible talent. And so I had to be the top of the playbill. Like I had to be everything. And again, so I went home and I waited tables and I worked at Planet Hollywood and I got knocked down a peg and I was so upset. I was like, what am I doing? I was just on this national tour and I was like in the middle of a really bad marriage that I had just gotten. I was like 25 and I got married because I thought that was what I was supposed to be doing. And I was like just so confused because I was like, what am I doing wrong? And it's like in this very negative like place of like young entitlement that I think a lot of young people in the arts feel when they go to these big art schools and they leave and they think that they're entitled to like be the star and everything. And I didn't understand what success really meant in the arts. And I don't know who told me this, but like somebody reframed it for me and they're like, to be a successful actor especially means to work consistently. It means to have longevity in your career. It means to work. That's all it means, right? It means to work and to be able to pay your bills and feel comfortable as a working actor. And I think I read a book, I don't remember which book it was, but it was about like Tony winners and how after they won Tonys, they didn't work and how hard that was because once you hit a certain level, there's like no more work for you. Like once you're a star in Broadway, where do you go from there? Because there are less starring roles and there are ensemble roles and understudy roles and all these other things. And I was like, well, maybe that is misguided. Like maybe I really don't want to be a star. Maybe I just want to be a working actor. Maybe just being a working actor is success. And so working at Planet Hollywood, I was like, maybe I just want to work. Like I'm not working right now. I'm waiting tables. I hate this. And I, again, was like, okay, we're gonna pound the pavement. We're gonna go to auditions. We're gonna try to book my next thing. And I, during that time, went back to Mamma Mia as like a vacation sub. And I remember going back and I had such a different attitude than I had when I left. And I don't think I quite realized it until some of my cast members, like castmates, brought it up. They're like, oh my God, Carly, you seem like you're really happy. Like, I was like, because I'm so grateful to be here. I'm just so happy to be working. Like, I'm so, like, having had this and having left and gone and waited tables and now getting to come back, like, oh my God, I'll be an understudy. Put me in the ensemble. I want to be a fly on the wall. Just like, let me work. And so I developed this like new appreciation of just being grateful to be working, you know, having a really good paycheck and being in a really great show and allowing myself to just have fun instead of like trying to be the star. And I discovered that like just allowing yourself to have fun in the arts goes a way farther than trying to be a star, because it kind of takes your ego out of it a little bit, and it makes you a much better person to work with, and people like you a lot more. And I carried that through. I carried that through getting divorced, and I had this newfound energy of like, I just want to like be an actor, and I just want to work, and I want to meet interesting people, and I want to develop my skills, and I want to be inspired by the other people that I work with. And through that, I then booked Wicked, and I was like, oh, this is great. This is what I should be doing, right? Like, I get to work on this incredible role who is like this empowered woman who goes through the struggle, and I get to meet all these incredible people, and I get to work with them, and I get to just develop these skills and be a working actor. And I was like, this is incredible. Let me understudy forever, because I get to watch these incredible women work, and I get to learn from them. And I was like, this is it. I did it. This is success. Being like inspired and working, paying my bills, that is success. That is where I want to be as an actor.
Wow.
And that carried me for quite a while. Like I did that for like 5.5 years. I was really excited to just be there, to be in the room with people and work and pay my bills and buy an apartment, and feel like I had made it. And I was not starring in that show. I was in the ensemble every night. It was fun, you know? It wasn't.
Carla, that is so inspiring. First of all, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing the struggles that you had through trying to figure out your career in theater. And, you know, there was this sort of struggle between being number one or being number two. And the fact that you left, and you sort of got a dose of like, what is life like? Like, life is not easy, and being told no is not easy, and not given like that primary role is not easy. And it sounds like you really had a real appreciation for gratitude. And, you know, it's sort of like, not to put words in your mouth here, but things could have been so much worse. And, you know, when you're working there at Planet Hollywood.
Yeah.
Is that where it was?
Yeah, it was the worst job.
When you were working at Planet Hollywood, you know, you sort of got a dose of what gratitude looks like. And it's so interesting how that reframed your thinking, and you went back, and people recognized it was almost like it was a new you that showed up there. And you were just grateful to be part of the set, part of the show. And I love that story, because ultimately what ended up happening is your work as an understudy at Mamma Mia, you sort of now recognize like it's okay to be an understudy. Now, with that comes a lot of sometimes stress and anxiety, because the expectation of what is expected of you as an understudy is something that we're going to talk about a little bit further. But you really, this is the second part of your identity, where you said, you know, I'm grateful for this, and I'm grateful to be here. People recognize that. And I feel like it was what set you up for the next thing, the next big thing, which was Wicked. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. I am really grateful. So one thing you hear me say, and I probably overuse being grateful for things, but I'm grateful for that struggle. I'm grateful like for the fact that I sometimes learn things the hard way, and I'm grateful that I get second chances a lot. Because I could have just like left Wicked with that bad taste in my mouth and kept that bad attitude, and then carried that bad attitude, and then quit the business because nobody would hire me, because I was just like such a negative Nancy with everything, right? And like I was able very quickly to reflect on that and self-reflect and be like, oh, you know what? Maybe it's me. Maybe I need to reframe this for myself. And I think a lot of times we don't do that enough. Like a lot of people, it's hard to do that, right? Because it does require a certain amount of vulnerability. It requires a certain amount of like looking at the decisions that you make and recognizing that you are responsible for a lot of the things that happened. And I think a lot of people like to just say, oh, well, why won't they cast me? Oh, why am I not getting this? Why am I not getting that? Why don't they like me? And I think learning to kind of take responsibility was really, really important, because I was like, oh, you know what? This is me. I'm not a nice person. Like my drive to be famous or whatever that is that ego is just needs to go. That is not a fun person to be around. And it's hard. It's hard to let go of that, especially as an artist, because there is a certain amount of ego required to be in the arts, right? Required to be an understudy. Sure. You have to have a certain amount of ego to be like, oh, the show's in 5 minutes, I can do that. Sure, right? You've got to have that kind of confidence in yourself, but you can't let that confidence make you just the worst human on the planet. And I work with a lot of actors who that confidence really, it makes them not fun people to be around. It's very common, I think, in the arts, especially in acting. You get that ego.
So how did you find Wicked?
So I had, at that point, my agent was like, he called me one day and he was like, what do you want to do? Do you want to be an Elphaba or a Glinda? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know which one I am. And I had auditioned for the show as like Nessa Rose like a year before that. Nessa Rose is the one in the wheelchair. It's Elphaba's younger sister. And I, at that audition, was told that I wasn't tragically beautiful enough. And I was like, okay, I'm never going to be in Wicked, because I never saw myself as an Elphaba or a Glinda. And having gone through all of this, particularly like my new appreciation for just being a working actor and my divorce, which I gotta say, man, you want to like find yourself, go through a divorce. But it really helped me recognize that I was a lot stronger than I thought I was. And so I was like, when he asked me Elphaba or Glinda, I was like, oh, I'm an Elphaba. I get it. I could be an Elphaba and I can sing that. I was like, I'm pretty sure I can sing it. I like went home and I like sang a little Defying Gravity. I was like, oh yeah, I could do that. I could do that. And like I had a friend who I'd gone to college with who was like doing the role on tour, and I was like, oh well, if she can do it, I can do it, because her and I are the same. And I had never really seen myself as that. And so my agent was like, all right, great, we'll get you an audition for it. And I was like, all right. And I went, and it was a ton of material, and I didn't get it. And they were like, great, we love Carla, but we just, not right now. And I was like, okay. And the casting office called me in for a lot of things at that time. So like they were seeing me a lot for a lot of different stuff, and which is good as an actor, right? Not getting work does not mean that you are not going to work. Not getting work and being in the room a lot is a good thing. And just getting seen and like getting to do like work sessions and doing all that doesn't necessarily mean that like you're not going to get the job eventually. It's giving them an opportunity to learn about you and see how you work and all that stuff. And so I was just like, okay, not now, but I know I'm going to get this role. Like I knew it. Like when I started working on the material, I was like, oh, this is a role I'm going to do. I just know at some point, like, and I was not upset that I didn't get it. I was like, that's okay. I'm going to get it at some point. And I just kept going in. And after my journey through that audition process was much shorter than a lot of girls. I have no friend who it took her 5 years of going in for Wicked to finally book it. That was probably about 7 months. So I went in, I think, like 2 or 3 times in those 7 months, and then booked it and went out on tour. But wow. Yeah, it was great. It was exactly what I needed. Elphaba was exactly what I needed in my life when I booked it. And again, like, I'm not a spiritual person, but I was like, oh, the universe was like telling me this is what you need to do. Like, this is who you are right now. This is what you need to learn. If you need to learn your strength, you need to find that. You need to like grow that. And I did a lot on that show. I grew up a lot on that show.
So it's interesting. So when you audition, it's common that a no the first time could turn into a yes 6 months later, because they cast over time and you keep trying. And do you work at, like, do you get feedback and then you go work on it? I remember earlier you saying it's hard to know what they're looking for in terms of the voice or the looks or the height or whatever. And I just wonder what makes it different the second or third time that they say yes.
I think when it comes to like long running shows, especially a show where like there is time, right? There's going to be more replacements. There's going to be openings. There's multiple casts. There's multiple companies. There's time to kind of grow with a role. And sometimes you go in and they go, okay, you're not ready yet. That's fine. And you do a work session and they like give you notes and then you come back in 4 or 5 months later and they see it again. And it's how you take those notes, right? It's how you come in and like whether or not they think you're ready for it. And sometimes you get the pleasure of having an opportunity like that, where like you do get to go back in and you do get to show them that you worked and you get to, prove to them that you have been able to grow with it.
Yeah, that's interesting because, when I think about working in corporate and corporate America, you interview for a job and you're told no, and that's it. They hire someone else. They're never going to say, well, go work on this, this, and this. I guess if you're young and you're applying for an internship or an entry-level position where they have multiple positions, they may say, go get some experience and then come back and reapply. But it's not common that when you're told no, you need to go find another place that's going to be a yes. But the fact that you had all these opportunities where you got to work on the role, take the feedback, it's interesting that you really worked through a lot of no's. So Carla, when was the moment you were working as an understudy for Wicked after 7 months of working hard and taking their feedback and coming back, they finally cast you and you worked at it for 5 years. And I wonder, when was the moment when you decided that this has run its course and it was time for you to make a change?
So my reasoning for leaving that show had a lot to do with the physical toll that the show took on my body. So now being grateful to be in that show was one thing, right? Like I loved being in that show. I actually really enjoyed being in the ensemble of that show, like doing that show every night and understudying. I had also been a standby on tour. When a standby role, the difference between standby and understudy is a standby is not in the ensemble. You're off stage, your first cover. You probably do the show maybe once or twice a week as Elphaba, maybe depending on the girl you're covering. And that was the role that I enjoyed the most because it allowed me to not have to dance because I was having some physical issues. Like I had hurt my toe, my big toe, and so dancing really hurt and heels. I was having neck issues. I had torn some like intercostal muscles in my rib cage. And if you've ever done that, it is really painful and it's really hard to come back from because every time you move, it hurts. My neck hurt from wearing those wigs and dancing on the rake. And I was hitting kind of this physical like wall with the show. And I think had I not had all those injuries, maybe I would have been able to stay longer because I did love that show. I loved being in that show.
Yeah. So just to be clear, I just want to, for listeners, when you say working in the ensemble, that means that you're not Elphaba, but you're a character that's dancing and you're in the ensemble, you're in the show, but you're not working as the main character.
So as an understudy, you are dancing and singing in the ensemble of that show 8 times a week. You are the townspeople. You are the shiz students. You are in that show. As a standby, you are not in the show. You are not in the ensemble. You are sitting in the dressing room, watching a movie, hanging out, doing whatever you want to do, or you are playing Elphaba.
So you like the standby. Like if you had the choice of the 3 or of the 2, you would prefer being a standby, not necessarily being in the ensemble, because it sounds like it took an incredible toll on your body and you were okay just sort of hanging out, waiting for that opportunity, but you didn't really want to do the 8 shows a week. So, when I think about like what was the moment, it was the buildup of all of that physical, emotional toll that your body was taking. Yeah,
I think, and that that was hard because I did love being in the show. Like if I had not had all those physical ailments from the show, I maybe would have stayed longer and been able to last longer in the ensemble of that show because I liked doing it. It wasn't that I didn't want to do it. It's that it hurt. And going and doing your job when everything hurts is really hard. And it really starts to like affect like your emotional life. And I didn't have that much issue when I was doing the standby role. And so that's why I was like, oh man, and then I got back to that thing of like, oh, I wish they would just like make me the standby so I don't have to dance anymore. And it wasn't necessarily that I didn't want to dance, it's that it hurt to dance. My body just hurt so much. And I was looking for a way out of that. And within the Broadway company, once I had gone from the tour to the Broadway company, they really liked me as the understudy. They liked that I was a really reliable understudy and they didn't want to move me into the standby role. Because believe it or not, it is surprisingly hard to find a girl who can belt all of Elphaba and also dance the ensemble role. She's a tricky role to dance. And I was good at it. And but it really hurt and I was really struggling. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. And they're not going to make me the standby. So I had to find a way out for myself that made sense. And that was grad school. That was the way out where I felt good telling people I was doing it. Like it felt like people respected it as a step away from a big Broadway show because it was really hard. It's really hard when you're like on Broadway and you're like living not only your dream, but everybody else's dream of what they think your dream should be and what it would be if they wanted to be a Broadway actor and all those things. And it's really hard to say I'm going to leave it. And so I was like, I'm going to go to grad school. I want to be a teacher. Because I had been teaching. I had been working at thespian festivals kind of on and off for that entire time I was with Wicked. I was working a lot with like high school students. And I was like, this is really, really cool. Like these kids were super inspiring. And I want to be an educator. So I left Wicked to go get my master's degree at NYU in theater education. And that was great. I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. I discovered I really wanted to work mostly with voice students. So I started focusing on kind of honing my voice teacher skills. And I did it, like I did the thing. Like I was like, this is the thing I'm going to do and I'm going to do it. And I did it. And I was like, I'm going to work on a college faculty. And I started applying to college faculties and I got onto 2 of them. And like it was another instance of like, oh, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do the thing and I'm going to get the thing. And I got the thing. And then I got the thing. And during that 5 years, the second 5 years of like the 2010s, between when I left Wicked in 2015 and like when the pandemic basically started in 2020, I was teaching and I was going in and out of Wicked. I was a vacation cover and I loved it because I could go to Wicked for like 2 weeks and my body would be able to like sustain the ensemble understudy role for 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, I'd be like, oof, my feet are done. I'm glad that I'm not in that full time anymore. Can't do that. And it was great. I got to like revisit it every few months, whatever, and then teach. And I enjoyed that. And I was doing my own show on a cruise ship. And I was very much in that multi-hyphenate of like, I'm a performer, but I'm a teacher and I've got a lot of things going on. And it was cool until I would have to do my taxes every year. And then until I'd have to reflect on how much money I wasn't making and how I was burning through my savings and then I had a couple like physical like health things come up and I was like, oof, this is expensive because my health insurance sucks because I don't have enough work hours being an actor to have my really great actor health insurance. And it was just like, again, it was another series of, oh, I got the thing I wanted. I'm doing all the things and it's really fun, but oh, now I have to be an adult. And now I'm like in my mid to late 30s and I'm an adult and my health is like doing things and I need to like prioritize having health insurance and I need to prioritize stability and I can't just I don't want to go back and wait tables. Like I was like, I got all this stuff going on and it seems like it's really positive but now I'm struggling in like a whole new way. Now it was like all these new things and I was like, oof, what? Why? I thought teaching would be the way out, but being an adjunct professor is not great. They do not pay well. And there's no health insurance that comes with that. So I just was like, I was in another moment where I was like, oh God, okay, I got the thing I wanted. I'm doing it. Great. But now I'm like, oof, this is a whole new set of problems, a whole new set of like, oh boy, this is not as easy as I thought it was going to be. And so what's the next thing? Where am I going to go now?
Wow. So this was
kind of your exit, but it was not, it was like an exit, half an exit. You sort of stepped your foot into a career that provided you with flexibility so that you could you could tap back into the Broadway scene and be part of the, all the excitement of being part of the show, but you weren't there full time. You got out of it full time, but you sort of put yourself in a position that was, to some extent, even less fulfilling because you weren't really fulfilled any longer by the work. Mm-hmm. And this new gig that you found over time, you're basically teaching kids to go into a field that you ultimately didn't necessarily like. And all of this stuff was like a snowball effect to saying, it's time for me to leave it altogether.
I love the idea of being a part-time performer, but being a part-time performer doesn't come with the benefits of being a full-time performer, which are the health insurance benefits and the pay benefits. And I was like, this is really hard. And I was having issues just with like the idea of what it meant to be an actor. And so it became very hard to teach college students to go into something where I felt that I wasn't being supported by the union. I wasn't being supported as like I couldn't do this part-time. Like there was not really a way to have one foot in and have flexibility that I felt like I was being supported and that I was like able to sustain. And that was really hard. Like I wanted to like inspire these kids to work hard and go be on Broadway and like do all these things. But I was like, this business is kind of hard and it sucks. And there's a lot of things that are not like, and you can't tell your students like, I don't think you're cut out for this. You are not, like, because maybe they are, maybe they aren't. That's not my decision to make. But it's really hard to teach when you see the struggle, like you've been through kind of this big roller coaster struggle with the industry, and you want to inspire them to do it, but you can't really tell that, like, I can't tell them not to do it. I can't really be honest with them about how hard it's going to be. And that it's not all the things that they think it is, right? You kind of have to learn that on your own.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you said that you were unstable. What was it that you ended up finding that brought you stability? What career did you ultimately go into?
Well, I mean, yeah, I randomly found software engineering, which is so random. It was so random. Like, I just was like desperately looking for something else that was so different than what I was doing because I was just like feeling so let down by the industry. And this idea of what it meant to be a successful actor, I was just like feeling so let down. I was like, I don't even want to be near the industry. I was feeling like a failure. I was feeling burnt out, and I was like, I need something else. And I randomly found software engineering. A friend of mine had changed careers. He'd done a boot camp and was like, I do this now. And I was like, what? How do I do that? And I loved it. It was creative. Like it was like something it was like kind of the thing I was looking for, because it was difficult. It required a lot of my attention and my focus, and it was a lot to learn, and it challenged my brain in a whole new way that I hadn't really felt challenged in a while. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. And then I would build stuff and they'd be like, oh my God, look at this website I just built. I just did this from scratch. Like I made that happen. I just like wrote these couple lines and now it looks so cute. And you could press this button and it does a thing. And it seems so simple and silly, but like it was really, really creative for me in an entirely different way than I had been feeling. And I was like, cool, I can do that. And again, it was like that thing where I was like, well, I can do that. Great. And I did a boot camp and it kind of like, it worked out really well. You know, I don't know if it's having brought the work ethic from theater into kind of like the corporate world, but like, we don't have to get too into it, but Raymond, I have only, every interview I've ever been on, I've only not gotten one job since I changed careers. I have a very good track record. My husband likes to brag about it because I've literally like, I'm like, oh, I want to work there. I interview and I get the job. Like I've literally only not gotten one job that I've interviewed for since I changed careers. And it's silly, and I'm not trying to like brag about it, but I do think, you know, it's that thing of like, I prepare for an interview the way I prepare for an audition. And you were kind of saying before that like, oh, in the corporate world, you don't get multiple rounds to come in and be seen again. But I prepare for that first round like I would prepare for a first audition, which I think is a lot more intense than most people prepare for a first like interview. And so I go in with like everything. I'm like, great, what do you want to talk about? Let's talk about this. I got questions for you. What do you think? Great. Let me tell you about what I would do if I didn't know the answer, how I would find it, who I would go to. Like, I'm so transparent about those things, having gone through all of that, like hearing no, that I'm not afraid of no. And so I go into interviews not being afraid of no and being pretty open, that I tend to get the jobs that I want because I'm not afraid to hear no. I'm not like afraid of the person interviewing me.
I love that. Yeah. I love that. That makes so much sense. I think that I feel like there's two things. One is the confidence of being told no so many times that you go in as your most authentic self. And you're true to who you are as a person, but you're also a performer. And so I think part of the challenge for people who go on an interview, they do it so infrequently. And so the idea of showing up and acting out how you would perform in a job for someone to evaluate whether you have the skills or not, you've been doing that your entire life. And so I feel like there is so much experience you bring to the table. And what I also think is interesting is that as an artist who is now a coder, you're also bringing a level of creativity and innovation to the work that you're doing, that it's almost like, when I think of a software engineer, I think of code as just sort of this dry, abstract kind of medium, if you will, to sort of create something. And the fact that you come from Broadway and you're a performer, you sort of bring emotion to the work that you're doing. And I think that's incredibly unique, a unique combination. And it's, I think it's a special formula that you have, and it makes you incredibly successful.
I agree. I'm going to have a big ego about it because I do agree. I think, it's the thing that I toot my horn about if I go into an interview. I'm like, this is what I'm going to offer you. Like, I don't look at things the same way as everybody else. Having been a performer, and especially, I look at things a lot from like a user perspective. And I like to think about code as just a medium, a creative medium with which to build things. Same as paint or clay or, pencil. Like, it's just a medium. It's just a medium with which to build something cool. And there's all sorts of different ways to do that. And I like figuring out what the best way to do something is. When I just finished teaching a intro engineering course through the boot camp that I had gone to. I sometimes work for them, and I tell them, I'm like, listen, guys, I'm going to grade your code, but like, there's a lot of different ways to do this, right? We can build this however you want. There are going to be better ways to do it, but your goal right now is just to figure out how to do it, right? Get it working, and then we can talk semantics, right? Then we can break down like the more efficient way to do something, but like right now, your job is just to like have fun and see if you can get it working. I think that's the fun of the job. It's just seeing if you can make it work. And then like the experience comes with, okay, well now let's look at what you did. Okay, maybe this is probably not efficient. We should probably do something here. But like, I think approaching it in that way is really important and something that I like to do. I try really hard to like enjoy the work that I'm doing and think about it that way as like a creative experiment.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I love that you're teaching those courses in the boot camp. So Carla, I wanted to ask a final question here. And, it's kind of connecting back to the beginning when I mentioned how you describe yourself as a professional multi-hyphenate, and you're also a member of Artists Who Code. And my question is, we talked a little bit about this idea of identity and how people sometimes they connect with an identity or connect with a career and oftentimes feel like they need to separate themselves from that job or career in order to do something different. And you've done an incredibly nice job at blending artistry with coding And I wonder, what advice would you give people who are right now in a place where they have transferable skills, but they're really just sort of struggling with, how do I take these skills that I have that are very different than what I'm really feeling like I'm drawn to do? And you've done an incredible job at that. I wonder, what advice would you give people who are trying to make a similar move that you've made?
I think, maybe it's my creative brain that's good at kind of drawing connections between things that have nothing to do with one another. But I think sitting down and thinking through the kind of the core of what is the job that I want to do and what are the similarities between the job that I have done, right? And I think it can be an exercise of just, it's almost like an improv exercise, right? Where you just kind of have to make connections between things, and you can go really far with them. They can be wild and crazy connections, but just kind of sitting down with a pen and paper and trying to make as many connections as possible, and allowing yourself, there are no wrong connections. There are no silly, bad connections. Everything is on the table. Because you could say, okay, I waited tables for the majority of my career, and now I want to be a software engineer. Well, those two things have nothing to do with each other. I beg to differ. It's like you worked with people, you had to communicate, you had to work under a stressful, situation, under time constraints. You learned how to navigate, difficult situations. You learned how to think on your feet. Like, all of these are skills that you can take into software engineering, right? All of these are things you could do. Like, okay, maybe you weren't sitting there writing code, but you were being creative about your time use. You were asking questions. You were working with other people on the floor and communicate. Like, these are things that, like, I think we underestimate those skills that we have, like kind of those quote unquote soft skills, and the importance that they play in jobs that are highly technical, where we think, well, these two things must have nothing to do with each other. But I think technical jobs require soft skills, right? Because I've worked with a lot of engineers who do not have great soft skills. And I got to be honest, it can be really hard, like, because they don't communicate, and they struggle to explain what they're doing. And it can be really difficult to get something done because they just don't know how to kind of cross that bridge and tie those two things together. And so I think it's really important to say, like, okay, all these other skills that I have may not seem relevant, but they are very relevant. And like really breaking that down for yourself, and literally not throwing anything off the table. I really think all skills can be relevant. Folding clothes, working at Abercrombie is relevant because it's a certain attention to detail and meticulousness and making sure that things look right, and understanding how to follow rules, and then understanding when maybe things need to change, right? Like, that's a skill set that I would use in software engineering. I think everything can be kind of finagled in a way to work. And so don't sell yourself short. Like, every experience that you've had is valid experience and will make you better at whatever thing that you want to go do. Software engineering, being in the circus, whatever you want, right? Like, if taking lawyer work and deciding you want to be an actor. Okay, well, you were a lawyer. You stood up in front of people and you talked. You learned how to do that. Why can't you be an actor? Same skills. I think everything is tied together in some way, and your job is sit down and figure out what those connections are.
Yeah, that's great. I love that advice, and I love how you connected the communication, the people skills to software engineering. So it's like more of a complement. You're able to, anyone can learn code and apply themselves and learn the skill of code, but it's that transferable skill that you described of communication and people skills and relationship building. Those are things that inherently aren't common with software engineers. And so the fact that they complemented each other, I think, is terrific advice. Carla, I have absolutely loved our conversation today. I feel like I love the early on learning about your dad being a tech guy and your mom being a performer, an entertainer, a musician. You started your career down that path, and then you clock out and you end up being a software engineer, and your dad is probably just so incredibly proud of the fact that you've done both. And so that was Such a really cool story. I enjoyed hearing that early childhood development. So thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So we're going to have all of your information in our notes on how to get in touch with you. So anyone that wants to get in touch with Carla, please feel free to reach out. And yeah, really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And thanks everyone for listening. Until next time. Hello, everyone. It's Raymond again here. I want to take a moment and say a special thanks to our sponsor, Career Minds. They're a global provider of career transition and career development solutions. And if you like what you're hearing today, please click on the follow button and rate our show. Until next time, remember, if you're sitting there and you're stuck or just unsure of your career or future, and you really think it's time for a change, I would encourage yourself to ask these 3 questions. Does my career or work make me feel alive? And am I doing the things that genuinely matter to me most? Am I creating value for myself and for others around me? Until next time.